Kofi sat across from Zainab at the kitchen table, his hands shaking as he stared at a pile of old photographs and burnt newspaper clippings. The silence between them felt heavy, almost painful. He pushed a photo towards her. 5 faces blurred with ashes, smiling as if they didn't know this picture would be the last ever taken of them. "I see them every night," Kofi whispered, voice rough and broken. The first time Kofi saw his own reflection, he did not recognize himself. His eyes were red, like blood. Not the red of tiredness that comes after staying up late. This was different. This was the red of eyes that had forgotten how to sleep for 10 years. He sat in his large sitting room in Lagos, in a house so big that it could fit 20 families, but he was completely alone. His reflection stared back at him from the expensive mirror on the wall. The man looking back was not the young billionaire everyone knew. He was hollow, empty, dead inside while still breathing. Kofi was one of the richest men in Nigeria. He owned businesses everywhere. Real estate, oil, technology companies, banks. Money came to him like water flowing downhill. But money could not buy what he needed most. Money could not buy sleep. 10 years. That was how long it had been since he last slept like a normal person. 10 years of walking around at night, 10 years of staring at the ceiling, 10 years of his mind playing the same sad movie over and over again in his head. The servants in his house knew not to ask him questions. He paid them well to keep quiet. There was Mama Grace, the cook, who had been with him for 5 years. There was Segun, the driver, who never looked him in the eye. There was the gardener, whose name Kofi could never remember because the man never spoke. They all knew something was wrong with their master, but they said nothing. That morning, Kofi decided something had to change. Or maybe he did not decide it. Maybe he just got tired of being tired. He called his secretary and told her to find someone new, a housemaid. Someone young, someone poor, someone who would not care about his strange ways. His secretary found Zainab. She was 17 years old and had just lost her mother. She came from a small village outside of Ibadan. She had no family left alive. The orphanage could not keep her after she turned 16, so she came to Lagos looking for work. When Kofi's secretary found her, she was sleeping under a bridge. Zainab arrived at the house on a Monday morning. She wore a simple blue dress that was too big for her. Her feet were bare. Her hair was tied back with a piece of rope. She looked at the huge house with wide eyes like she was looking at a palace. "This is where you work now," the secretary told her. "You clean rooms, you arrange things, you help Mama Grace. You do what you are told. You do not ask questions. You do not speak about what you see. You understand?" Zainab nodded. She did not speak much. That first day, she cleaned the entire house. It took her from morning until almost midnight. Her feet hurt, her back hurt, but she was happy because she had a job. She had food. She had a bed to sleep in. Kofi watched her from the window of his study as she worked in the garden. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who was unsure if she had the right to touch anything. She was so thin that the wind seemed like it might blow her away. That first night, Zainab fell asleep in her small room off the kitchen. She slept so hard that she did not hear anything, but Kofi did. He walked through the house like he always did. He walked through every room, he checked every door, he looked out every window. The night was long and dark and quiet. At 3 a.m, Kofi went to the kitchen for water. That is when he heard it. Zainab was screaming. He ran to her room and pushed open the door. She was sitting up in her bed, but her eyes were wide open. But she was still asleep. She was having a nightmare. "No, no, no, please no, Mama, please!" Kofi stood in the doorway. He did not know what to do. He had not been close to another human being in so long. He did not know how to help anyone anymore. He stood there and listened to her cry in her sleep. And then something strange happened. For the first time in 10 years, Kofi felt something other than pain. He felt something like maybe he was still human. He went back to his room and lay in his bed. He did not sleep, but he thought about the girl. He thought about how she was also running from something in her dreams. He thought about how maybe they were both broken people in a broken house. The night stretched on and on. The sun would not come up. Time moved so slowly when you couldn't sleep, but Kofi waited for morning. And when the sun finally came, he saw Zainab in the kitchen, and she looked at him with her tired eyes, and he saw himself in her face. Another person who knew what it was like to carry something too heavy to carry. "Did you sleep?" he asked her. It was the first thing he had said to her. She shook her head. "Neither did I," he said. And for the first time in 10 years, someone else knew the truth about him. Zainab started to notice things about her new master on the third day. She noticed that he never ate breakfast. She would prepare it the way Mama Grace taught her: eggs, bread, beans, orange juice, and she would leave it on the table. By the time she came back, the food was untouched. Sometimes it would still be warm, sometimes it would be cold because it had been sitting there for hours. She noticed that his bedroom light was always on, even in the middle of the day, even when the sun was bright outside. She would pass by his door and see the light coming from under the doorframe. One time she worked up the courage to knock and ask if he wanted her to turn it off. He said no. He said he liked to keep the light on. She noticed that he walked around the house at night. She would hear his footsteps in the hallway. She would hear him opening doors, opening windows, closing them again. Sometimes he would stand outside on the balcony for hours, just staring at nothing. She noticed that his eyes were different from other people's eyes. They were not just tired, they were scared, like he was always looking for something that was chasing him. On the 5th night, Zainab could not sleep again. She had the nightmare again, the same one. She was back in the orphanage, and the director was calling her into his office, and she didn't want to go, but her legs were moving without her telling them to move. She woke up gasping, her body covered in cold sweat. She got out of bed and walked to the kitchen to drink water. That is when she saw him. Kofi was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. He was staring at nothing. His fingers were shaking. There were all sorts of papers all over the table, lots of them. Newspaper clippings, photographs, letters. He did not hear her come in first. When he finally saw her, he quickly tried to gather the papers, but one of them fell on the floor. Zainab picked it up without thinking. It was a newspaper clipping from 10 years ago. The headline said, "Business deal goes wrong. 5 workers dead in factory fire." There was a photograph of a building that was completely burned. Black smoke was still coming from it, and there was another photograph of a younger Kofi standing next to some other men, all of them smiling. "That is not for you to see," Kofi said quietly. Zainab dropped the paper and backed away. She was sorry. She should not have looked. She should have just walked away. But Kofi did something unexpected. Instead of shouting at her, he sat back down. He put his head back in his hands. "Sit," he said. Zainab did not move. "Please," he said, "just sit. I do not want to be alone right now." So she sat. They sat in silence for a long time. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, the city of Lagos was asleep. Inside, 2 broken people sat at a table with the weight of 10 years of pain between them. "I cannot sleep," Kofi said finally. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. The 5 people who died in that fire. I see them. I see their families crying. I see everything." Zainab said nothing. She just listened. "It was my factory," he continued. "I did not check the safety equipment. I did not care enough to check. I was too busy making money, too busy being important. And because of my carelessness, 5 people burned to death. And I have not slept since that day." He looked at her. "Do you think that is punishment?" he asked. Do you think God took away my sleep as punishment? Zainab thought about this. She thought about her own mother who died from sickness. She thought about her own nightmares. She thought about all the pain she carried. I do not know, she said quietly, but I know that staying awake does not bring them back. Kofi looked at her like she had just said something very wise, even though she was just speaking the truth. The next morning, Mama Grace found them asleep at the kitchen table. Zainab was leaning against the wall. Kofi was leaning on his arms. They had not moved all night, but for the first time in a long time, they had not been alone with their pain. Over the next week, something changed in the house. Kofi still did not sleep at night, but he started to talk to Zainab. In the mornings, he would ask her about her life. Where was she from? What was her village like? What did her mother do? Did she have any brothers or sisters? Zainab told him her story slowly, piece by piece. She told him about her mother who sold cloth at the market. She told him about how her mother got sick and there was no money for medicine. She told him about the orphanage where they treated the children like they were invisible. She told him about the director and the things he did that made her skin feel wrong. And Kofi listened. He listened like her words were the most important thing in the world. One night, Zainab was cleaning the sitting room when she found a bottle of whiskey. It was almost empty. There were many empty bottles hidden under the sofa and in the cabinets. Kofi had been drinking every night, trying to make his body tired enough to sleep. She threw all the bottles away. She did not ask permission. She just threw them in the trash outside. When Kofi discovered this, she thought he would be angry. Instead, he cried. He cried like a small child who had just realized something important. I have been trying to escape for 10 years, he said. I have been trying everything. Medicine, alcohol, traveling, working all the time, and nothing worked. But then you came, and you did not try to make me escape. You just sat with me. You just listened. Zainab did not know what to say, so she did what felt right. She took his hand. And for the first time in 10 years, Kofi felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a reason to believe that things could change. On the night of the 15th day, Kofi told Zainab everything. They were sitting on the back balcony of the house. The city of Lagos was spread out below them, like a million lights. It was 2 a.m. Kofi had not slept. Zainab had given up trying to sleep a long time ago. I want to tell you the whole story, Kofi said. Not just the newspaper part. The real story. The part that nobody knows. Will you listen? Zainab nodded. Kofi took a deep breath. He had not told anyone this story in 10 years. When I was younger, I was not rich. My family was poor. My father was a taxi driver. My mother sold food by the roadside. I was smart in school, and I got a scholarship to university. I studied business. And I was hungry. Do you know what I mean? I was hungry to have everything, to be somebody, to never be poor again. He paused and looked out at the city. After university, I started small. I bought a small shop, then another shop. Then I started a transport business. Then I invested in real estate. Everything I touched turned to money. I was young and smart and lucky, and I forgot where I came from. I forgot what it felt like to be hungry and poor. She listened without interrupting. 10 years ago, I was 30 years old. I had already made enough money to retire and never work again. But I wanted more. There was a factory that made textiles, cloth for clothes. The owner wanted to sell it. He was old and tired. I bought it for a very cheap price because I found out that the safety equipment was old and broken. But I did not care about fixing it because fixing it would cost money. money that would come out of my profits. His voice became very quiet. I hired 50 workers. Good people. People from poor families like mine used to be. People who needed the job. People who did not ask questions because they were just happy to have work. I paid them very little. I worked them very hard. And I did not fix the safety equipment. Kofi's hands were shaking now. One day, there was a fire. It started in the back of the factory. No one knows exactly how it started. Maybe it was the old electrical wiring. Maybe it was an accident. But the exits were blocked. The fire equipment did not work. The alarms did not work properly. And 5 people burned to death inside that building. He stopped talking. He could not continue for a moment. Their names were Adekunle, Foleke, Chinedu, Blessing, and Tunde. He remembered all their names. Adekunle was 23 years old. He had just gotten married. His wife was pregnant. Foleke was 47 years old. She was sending money to her grandchildren. Chinedu was 19. He was saving money to start his own business. Blessing was 35. She was the only one supporting her family of 8 people. Tunde was 26. He wanted to be an engineer someday. Tears were running down his face now. The police came, but I had money. I paid the right people. I paid the investigators. I paid the judges. The case was closed. No charges were filed. I paid the families money. Not enough money. Never enough money. But they took it because they were desperate. They had no other choice. He looked at Zainab directly in the eyes. And that night, I went home and I tried to sleep, but I could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them burning. I saw Adekunle's life crying. I saw Foleke's grandchildren asking where their grandmother was. I saw Blessing's 8 children becoming orphans, like you. And I could not close my eyes. My body would not let me sleep. Zainab felt tears on her own face now. I tried everything, Kofi said. I went to doctors. I went to priests. I went to traditional healers. I drank medicine. I drank alcohol. I traveled all over the world. I worked so much that I didn't have time to think. But nothing worked. 10 years passed. 10 years of not sleeping. 10 years of seeing their faces. 10 years of knowing that I was a murderer. You are not a murderer, Zainab said quietly. Yes, I am. I killed them. Not with a knife or a gun, but I killed them with my greed. I killed them because I didn't care enough to spend money to keep them safe. Zainab sat in silence for a long time. Then she told him her own story. She told him about the orphanage director. She told him about how he would call girls into his office at night, how he would tell them that if they told anyone, no one would believe them because they were orphans, how he would hurt them in ways that made their bodies feel like they belonged to someone else. She told him about how her mother had gotten sick right after Zainab was taken in by the orphanage. She suspected that the director had something to do with it. She couldn't prove it. She had to keep quiet. Kofi listened to her story, and his heart broke into even smaller pieces than it already was. I am sorry for what happened to you, he said. I am sorry that I could not protect you. I'm sorry that there are so many people like me, people with money and power who hurt people like you and then walk away. But you are different now, Zainab said. How do you know? Kofi asked. Because you remember their names, she said. You remember who they were. You didn't just forget about them and move on with your life. You are still carrying them with you. That means something. Kofi looked at her and saw something in her face that he had not seen in anyone else.
He saw forgiveness, not forgiveness for what he had done, but forgiveness for what he was trying to do now, forgiveness for his attempt to be better. "I have an idea," Zainab said, "but you might not like it." "Tell me," Kofi said. "You need to go back," she said. "You need to go back to those families. You need to tell them the truth, all of it. The truth about why the fire happened, the truth about what you did. You need to ask for their forgiveness, and then you need to give them real money, not hush money, not guilt money, real money to help them, to send their children to school, to help them start businesses, to change their lives." Kofi felt something shift inside his chest. It was small, it was fragile, but it was there. "If I do that," he said slowly, "I will have to go to prison. They will charge me with crimes. I will lose everything." "Maybe that is what needs to happen," Zainab said softly. "Maybe that is the only way to break the curse." And for the first time in 10 years, Kofi considered the possibility that losing everything might be the only way to gain back his soul. The decision took 3 days. Kofi spent those 3 days walking around his house like a ghost. He looked at his expensive things, the paintings, the sculptures, the furniture that cost more than most people made in a year. He looked at his bank statements, numbers so big they didn't even feel real anymore. He thought about prison. He thought about losing his freedom. He thought about living in a small cell instead of this palace. But every time he thought about those things, he remembered the faces. Adekunle, Faleke, Chinedu, Blessing, Tunde. On the 4th day, he made the call. He called his lawyer and told him everything. The lawyer said he was crazy. The lawyer said that confessing would destroy him. The lawyer said that Kofi should keep quiet and let the past stay in the past. Kofi fired the lawyer. He called a different lawyer, a good one, an honest one, a woman named Mrs. Okongwo, who was known for fighting for poor people against rich people. He told her everything. He told her he wanted to confess. He wanted to turn himself in. He wanted to face justice. Mrs. Okongwo looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "This will change everything. Are you sure?" "I have not been sure about anything in 10 years, but I am sure about this." The next morning, Kofi went to the police station with Mrs. Okongwo. He walked in and told them the truth. He told them about the fire, about the broken safety equipment, about the people he paid off, about everything. The police did not believe him at first. Why would a rich man confess to crimes that had been closed for 10 years? It didn't make sense. But Kofi had all the evidence. He had kept all the receipts, all the records, all the proof of the bribes he had paid. The case was reopened. The investigation started again. The news spread through Lagos like fire. "Billionaire confesses to cover up in fatal factory fire," the newspaper screamed. "Kofi Adeyemi turns himself in after 10 years,
the television news reported. The families of the 5 dead workers were contacted. At first, they did not know what to believe. Some of them were angry. Some of them cried. Some of them said it was too late. Nothing could bring back their loved ones. But Kofi went to see them anyway. He went to Adekunle's wife first. Her name was Bola. She was living in a small apartment with her daughter, who was now 10 years old. Adekunle's daughter had never met her father. She only knew him through pictures and stories. Kofi knocked on the door. When Bola saw him, she tried to close the door, but Kofi did not push. He just waited. "I came to tell you the truth," he said through the closed door. "About your husband, about the fire, about everything I did." Slowly, Bola opened the door. Kofi told her the truth. He told her about the broken equipment. He told her about how he knew it was dangerous and did not care. He told her about how he paid people off to make the investigation go away. He told her about how he had been running from what he did for 10 years. "I cannot undo what happened," he said, "but I want to help your daughter. I want her to go to the best school. I want her to have every opportunity. I want to help you rebuild your life." Bola looked at him and something in her face softened. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe the beginning of forgiveness. He did the same with each family. He told them the truth. He listened to their pain. He did not try to make excuses. He did not try to minimize what he had done. And then he gave each family money. Not money to make them go away. Money that was enough to change their lives. Money for education, money for businesses, money for healing. Falake's grandchildren got scholarships to good schools. Chinedu's mother got money to start the small business her son had dreamed about. Blessing's 8 children got money for school and food and a better place to live. Tunde's parents got money to help them in their old age. The trial took 4 months. The prosecutors presented all the evidence. Kofi's lawyers did not fight. Kofi stood up in court and told his story. He told the judge about the 5 people who died. He told the judge about his own 10 years of sleeplessness. He told the judge that he deserved to be punished. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison. On the day Kofi went to prison, Zainab came to say goodbye. "What will you do?" Kofi asked. She said, "I will wait, simply. And I will use the money you gave me to go to school. You said I was smart. You said I could be a doctor. I am going to be a doctor. And when you get out of prison, maybe I will help you rebuild your life, the way you helped those families rebuild theirs." Kofi felt tears on his face, not the tears of pain. These were different tears. These were tears of something like hope. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing that I was still human, for not letting me disappear into my own darkness." "You saved me too," Zainab said. "You gave me a place to live. You gave me food. You believed in me. We saved each other." In prison, something unexpected happened. Kofi slept. The first night in his cell, he lay down on the hard bed and he closed his eyes, and his body finally let him sleep. He slept deeply and without dreams. When he woke up the next morning, he cried, not from sadness, from relief, from the feeling of a curse finally being broken. He didn't understand it at first. Why could he sleep now? He was in prison. He had lost everything. He was paying for his crimes. But then he realized he could sleep because he had finally faced what he had done. He had told the truth. He had helped the families. He had stopped running. He had accepted his punishment. The curse was not about what he had done. The curse was about running from what he had done. The curse was about hiding. The curse was about pretending that money could make everything disappear. During his time in prison, Kofi became a different man. He taught other prisoners how to read and write. He listened to their stories. He helped them understand that their past did not have to control their future. He worked in the prison garden and grew food for the other inmates. He wrote letters to the families of the people who died. Not letters asking for forgiveness, letters telling them about his life in prison, letters sharing what he was learning about himself, letters that showed them he was changing. Bola wrote back. Then Falake's grandchildren wrote. Then Tunde's parents. Slowly, they began to see that Kofi's change was real. Not perfect, but real. 8 years passed. On the day Kofi was released from prison, Zainab was waiting outside the gates. She was wearing a white coat, a doctor's coat. She had finished medical school. Kofi looked at her and smiled. She said, "I told you I would be a doctor." "Yes, you did," Kofi said. They walked together to the taxi that was waiting. Zainab had prepared a small house for him, not the palace he used to own, a simple house, a good house. She asked as they drove through Lagos, "What will you do now?" Kofi said, "I do not know yet, but I know I will not run away from the answer. I will face it, like I faced everything else." "Good," Zainab said. She took his hand, "because there is still work to do. Those families need more help.
The other factories need to be checked for safety problems. Workers need to be protected. There is so much work to do. Kofi nodded. He understood now. The curse was not meant to destroy him. It was meant to wake him up, to show him that his life had to mean something more than money and power. That night in his small house, Kofi lay in bed and he slept peacefully. He slept without nightmares. He slept knowing that he had tried to make things right. Not perfectly, not completely, but he had tried, and that was enough to break the curse.
Years later, there was a foundation, the Eddie Kuncle Foundation, named after the first person who died in the fire. It checked factories all over Nigeria for safety problems. It helped poor workers get fair wages in safe conditions. It was run by Zainab, now Dr. Zainab, and Kofi together. The people who died in that fire were not forgotten. Their names were remembered. And because they were remembered, other people were protected. Other families did not have to suffer the same loss. Kofi never became rich again, but he became something he had never been before. He became useful. He became honest. He became free. And Zainab, the orphan girl who had nothing, became the woman who saved a man's soul and changed the world around her. The curse was broken not by sleep returning to Kofi's eyes. The curse was broken the moment he decided that facing the truth was better than running from it forever.